something of a rare moment that we hear about in our first reading today. It's a beautiful moment, but it's a rare moment in the scriptures. We hear of all the Israelites, all the tribes coming together. They stand before David and say, "The Lord is clearly working through you. He's called you to be our king. We all want you to be our king." They're united. They submit to him. They ask for him to lead them. We can see how rare a moment this is, though, if you know anything about the Old Testament history, that it's generally full of division and rebellion and fighting over the leadership and all of that. Not this kind of unity and this willful submission to the Lord's plan. No, this is a rare moment. And even though the kingship of David was so significant to what God was doing in the people of Israel, such a significant gift to them, the way that God wanted to care for and shepherd his people was through the line of kings coming from David. Even though at this moment they were all able to unite and say, yes, this is what God is doing, this is how he's going to care for us, we want you to be our king, most of the time they're killing each other for the kingship, or they're just rebelling and going away, or half of the tribes just disappear and go off into a different kingship, or they're just being destroyed from outside. So it's a rare moment, but it's beautiful to see, because today we recognize that the fulfillment of the kingship that God was offering us in David is found in Jesus. Jesus is that king that God gives us, who will reign over our lives, who will care for us, protect us, guide us, be our shepherd for God, to lead us in God's will. But still, just like the people of the Old Testament, there's plenty within us and between us that stops us from following that plan. We look into our own hearts, we look into society, and it's not exactly a united picture of, yes, Lord, please be our king. No, we see the pride and the competition and the wrangling for power and control. We see the rebellion and the resistance to Jesus' rule. And so that's what I want to reflect on with you today. What is it that stops us from entrusting ourselves completely to Jesus' kingship? And I want to reflect on that through Toy Story. I don't know if you see the link, but please bear with me. So if you're not familiar with the world of Toy Story, it's a world of toys. Well, it's a normal world, but there are toys. But the toys aren't like our toys. They're alive, and they can think and speak and talk to one another, and they live very exciting lives. But when the child comes in the room to play with them, or the parent comes in the room to clean up the room, they fall over limp so that they can still serve as toys. They still recognize they have this role. Because most of the toys belong to a child, they understand that their life is about being there for the child, allowing the child to have fun, allowing the child to have the friendship that they have with them, and to be supported by the cool toys that they have. But these toys are very human, because we see in them as well that there's pride and competition and grasping for control. We see that they fight with one another over who's the best and who's the favorite and who's going to get played with today. They set themselves up in their own little kingdom. They want to be boss of all the other toys. They want to control things. And they also, throughout the different movies, they also wrestle with this question of, is it really the best thing for me to belong to a child and to have to be played with by them and be there for them all the time? Or is it better if I just went out on my own adventure, lived my own life as my own toy? But still, the whole Toy Story saga keeps putting before us that the ideal is the best way a toy can live, the greatest meaning the life of a toy can have, is to be there for their child. The fulfillment of the life of the toy is to live their life for the child, to live their life for someone else, and to that faithfulness and submission. We see as well that they wrestle with the danger and the fear, because if we submit ourselves to somebody, there's a bit of a risk, isn't there? What if we get mistreated or rejected? My child might decide to throw me out, put me in the rubbish. That's not very nice for a toy to go through. Or I might get put in the attic and never played with again. Or I might find myself with a child who's going to mistreat me. Might be the evil kid from next door who tortures toys just for fun. But even so, the saga still points us to this ideal that what the toys really want in their hearts is to serve their child, to always be there. And all of the different adventures that they go on, the motivating factor is that they always want to get back to their child and be there for them. They want to live their life for the child, submitting themselves to the child. And while we think that, how can a toy have a relationship with a real live human being? It can seem a bit like the gap, the distance that we find when it's how can I, an ordinary, lame human being, have a relationship with the God of the universe? Similar sort of distinction. Don't take the analogy too far. But it doesn't speak of this relationship as a slavery or even being owned by the child. They constantly show it as a relationship of love and of friendship because it transcends just a thing that belongs to them. So all of these things, I think, can relate beautifully to what Jesus is inviting us to today. Because the gospel puts before us an ideal that the greatest purpose we can put our lives to is not found within ourselves. It's found by submitting to another. The greatest freedom is not found in being independent and going off and having my own adventure and living my own life, or setting myself up as king and having the control over things, but it's through the humility and trust of submitting myself to someone else who's going to lead me and care for me and be my king. And it's not anyone that we can submit ourselves to because, of course, we know the danger that we may be mistreated or we may be rejected if we entrust ourselves to somebody. But no, the gospel points us to that one person that we can entrust ourselves to. In him is found our freedom. In Jesus is found that greatest fulfillment of our lives. If we live our lives for his sake. If we live our lives with him as the center. If we submit ourselves to belong to him, not in a slave relationship, but in friendship and faithfulness and trust. We struggle with these same issues that the toys do, of pride and competition and wanting to control things, and we wrestle with the fear and the danger of, what if I'm not looked after? What if I'm not cared for? And we see this not only in our own struggle to allow Jesus to be our king, but we see it in our gospel today. There's a number of different characters there making a different response to Jesus. Jesus is hanging on the cross, and they look at him and go, I don't know if you're really fit to be my king. Even the Jews that have spent their whole life longing for the promised king, the promised son of David, who was God's ruler, God's gift to rule over them, they look at Jesus, whose mission or his life is failing right now. He's about to die. And they say, you can't even save yourself. How are you going to be our Messiah? How are you going to care for us? The soldiers that are crucifying him mock him as well. Some king of Israel you are. You can't even save yourself. The man being crucified next to him says, go on, you've claimed to be the anointed one of God. Why don't you save yourself? And, why don't you save us too? While you're at it, that'd be nice. But there's one man in this scene who I think is the most courageous person there, because he looks at Jesus hanging on the cross and says, I want you to be my king. Even though it looks like Jesus' mission is failing, he can see past that to trust in Jesus' kingship, and he says, remember me when you come into your kingdom. I want to throw my lot in with you. I want to trust in your care for me and your life. Yes, I'm about to die. Yes, you're about to die, but I want to live for you. There are 1,000 reasons that we can see that discourage us from wanting to trust Jesus. that make it look like he can't care for us, or he won't provide for us, or he's not going to answer our prayers. Those voices can seem a lot louder than the little voice in our heart that draws us towards Jesus often. But today we celebrate that Christ is King, that his kingship didn't end there in failure on the cross, but that he rose again to reign over all of creation and to give us life. And so we're invited to look upon Jesus hanging on the cross, giving his life for us, himself submitting to the will of the Father. And we're invited to say, I want to trust in you. I want to submit myself to you. Because this is the truth, that the greatest fulfillment of our human life, the greatest meaning we can find is in Jesus. The greatest freedom we can find is in the life that he wants to give us. Not the freedom of being independent, doing our own thing, but the freedom of submitting ourselves to the King. So the invitation we're given in this feast, and the invitation I want to give you today, is simply this: that Jesus promises and offers to care for us. He promises and offers us new life, power in the Holy Spirit, freedom through his gospel. Are you willing to submit? Are you willing to allow him to be your King?